guys, it's John from Eastern Hot Rodder. Today we're here with a special car. Some of you guys have already watched the video of me getting this ready for the road again. This Corvette was originally built and owned by my father. He passed away back in November, so it was kind of bittersweet getting this one running. It was really important to get this one on the road so we can make it drivable again. This was a car that he built many years ago. So I'm here today to talk about that. My daughter, Sage, she's behind the camera, and she's going to be asking me questions and stuff. You give you some insight and some history on this car. Time passes by fast, and you kind of lose track of how long you had something sometimes. And there's a lot to this car, and there's a lot to why this car is what it is today. So hopefully you guys learn some interesting stuff about some old car that we have kicking around.
The first question we have is, how long has the Vette been in the family?
I'm not 100% sure on the year that he bought it. I can't remember exactly, but it was around, I'd say 96 or 97. I think it was probably, I'd say probably 97 is when he got the car. Because I was still in college and it was before I met my wife. So it's been around 97, I'd say.
What inspired the build?
That one actually goes back quite a ways. My dad was always a Corvette guy. He had his first Corvette when he was just a young kid. It was a 58 Corvette that he stuck a 409 in. And years later, he was in a bad motorcycle accident when I was in 5th grade. And he decided to get out of the motorcycles and get into cars, so he wanted to build a hot rod 57 Corvette. So we flew out to Salt Lake City, Utah, and bought a Corvette out of a junkyard and drove it home. It was the coolest trip in the world. That's what got me into cars. It was just awesome. He got the car home, started to dig into it, found out some history of the car. It turned out it was owned by a movie studio and then sold to a cameraman, and then the motor ended up blowing up. And the car was extremely original for a car that was modified a lot for movies. It was pretty complete and pretty original. So everybody talked him into restoring the car instead of hot rodding it. So he built the car, loved the car. It was a National Show winner and a calendar car. Actually, I'll show you. Let me grab the camera quick and I'll bring you over to this and we'll bring you back. That was his 57 there. That was his favorite month. So that was the car. We drove it home. It did not look like that when we drove it home. So when he got that, he restored it, and the Corvette purists kind of bugged him, and because they were so picky about stuff, and he made the car about as correct as you could get it. And he said, you know what, I'm going to get another one and I'm going to chop it up. I'm going to make it a real hot rod. He ended up finding this 64. He had a couple other 64s. He had a 64 when I was first born that he ended up selling. Years later, he bought a silver 64 for my mom to drive. We had the 57, he had a 60. But the 64, this was his third 64. This is one that he turned into a crazy hot rod.
Next question is, what condition was it in when he got it?
It was bad. It was, well, overall, I would say it was probably worse than the 57. The 57, we drove home from Utah to upstate New York. This one, he brought it ran. It was an old World of Wheels custom car. It had a Mako Shark style nose on it. Had a huge fin on the back that was like kind of popular for its day, and that thing held like 5 gallons of water. It was an old candy apple red paint job that was old and faded and touched up with Chevy engine orange. It had the rear wheel wells were cut, but they weren't flared. You can see these are flared, but they were just cut at the time, and it had studded snow tires on it, real tall tires, to offset the 488 gears that were in it. It was a 307 small block Chevy with a 2-barrel that was in it, and the guy's like, he said, "You want to hear it run?" My dad says, "No." He goes, "Well, it runs good." And I said, "I don't care. I'm not going to keep that engine in it." And I think he paid like $6,500 for it way back then, and then he sold enough parts off it to just about pay for the car. And the car was in such rough shape that every Corvette purist walked away from it, and it was, just really, it was pretty bad, So it was, he got the car home and immediately started taking it apart. And it's funny because I was going through trying to find pictures of the car, and usually like when we get a car home, he was never one for taking pictures, but I was always grabbing the camera, and I was looking at it for a picture when we first got it, and the only picture I could find of it was this picture. Is that focusing?
Yeah.
Of the engine. And we laughed about it and took the picture because I don't know if you could tell there, but the air cleaner, it had chrome tape on it, and it spelled out Corvette Stingray in mailbox letters. And the fellow my dad got it from thought that was an original Corvette air cleaner. The engine he gave to a guy that was doing circle track racing for the street stock class. So these two pictures just cracked me up. So my dog Glory, my old American Bulldog, she loved the car. So there's the body jig that my dad made. This is after he stripped it down. He stretched the wheel wells 2.5 inches, and he had it on this cart, and the dog would always jump up in it. And you can see that one there. And then here's another one here. That was Glory. She was as ugly as the car was at the time. There's my mom. He hand laid all the fiberglass and everything on it, and built everything. There's the original rear floor section with the frame rails that we cut the frame out. The frame of this car, the rear suspension setup and everything is welded in the back of my little red shop truck. So nothing really went to waste. And he hand laid the fiberglass wheel tubs. So you can see how it's all hand laid fiberglass. And we'll show you some details on that and how it's finished and stuff. But he had the car stripped down to nothing. There was one bolt that he didn't take out that was in the framework under the windshield. And that ended up coming back and biting us. The windshield fell through when we were trying to install it and broke on that. So we ended up having to get a windshield twice for it. So it's on its third windshield.
Was it always a gasser?
No, originally my dad built it as a Slam Pro Streeter. It was, let's see if I have any pictures of it done as a Pro Street car. So here's a picture of it. That's the bare chassis. That was after he narrowed it. It's a narrow 9-inch rear, 31/18/5 Mickey Thompsons on the back, 427 dual quads, the hooker side pipe headers. We actually brought that chassis to a car show the way it was like that. Let's see if we can get the glare off there. You can see it's narrow 9-inch. In this picture, it had 411 gears. I think it's got 3.5s in it now, if I remember right. After he lowered the body on, it sat like that. You can see the Mako Shark nose in this shot. It's still there. That was after its first paint job. Tim Sager painted it for us, and he did a great job on it. It lasted like that for a long, long time. And he ran it for years as a Pro Street with a 427 in it.
What made him decide to change it from Pro Street to gasser?
That was kind of my fault. I was working on the 41 Willys, and I bought that car as a Pro Street car and tore it all apart, and we were changing it into a gasser, and we were working on the front suspension, if I remember right. He was starting to get bored with his car. You know how it is. If you're a hot rod guy, you guys know how it is. You have a car for a while, and you don't change it, and then you start really wanting to change it up or get rid of it. So he actually listed the car for sale a couple times, came really close to selling it, then just decided to change the car and freshen it up and make it like something he would have liked to have back in the late 60s. He took the front suspension, made some ball joint spacers, put some heavy duty springs in the front, took the big fat tires off the back, and put a 10-inch wheel on the back with a Mickey Thompson ET Street radial, and gave it that gasser look. He went under chassis exhaust with it, and he ran it for a short time. Well, I ran it for a while, lettered up. I'll show you a picture. We'll stick that like right here. And then
over that way more.
Yeah, well, It'll probably take up the whole screen. So anyway, we'll show you a couple pictures of that because I don't have a picture of it when it was lettered up, when he first gassered it. He ran it like that for a while, had a white roof on it at the time, and it said, well, you can see in the picture, still crazy in the door, 427 cubic inch on the fender. Then he decided to build a blower motor for it. So he pulled the 427 out, which we still have that too. Built this 468 with a blower and ran it for a season or two. And at first, like the first week he had it out, he was pulling into a parking spot and his pant leg got caught on the brake pedal and he couldn't hit the brakes, and he idled into a telephone pole and smacked the front end and completely wrecked that Mako Shark nose. So the insurance company came out and said that there's nobody that makes that nose anymore, so they would pay to put a stock style nose on it. So that's what he did. The Mako Shark nose had a big fender flare here, so he kept the fenders stock on it when he put the stock nose on and went up to the flip up headlights like stock had, which he was thrilled. He always really wanted a stock nose on it, but he couldn't afford to do it when he first built the car, so that's why he had the Mako Shark nose on it. So we all seem to like it better with the stock nose.
What are the mechanical details?
Okay, so 750 Holley double pumper carbs that are matched to the blower setup. 468 cubic inch big block. It was actually, that was a 4-bolt main block that was in my 73 Corvette. Big solid roller cam. It's the camshaft that Comp Cam offers for the blown big block. It's like the only one they list anymore. It's like I'm trying to remember what it was. It was like a 659 inch lift, if I remember right, on the intake and exhaust. That sends the power back to the Turbo 400 with a 3500 stall, and then out to a narrow 9-inch rear with a 350 gear in it. You see, look how nice those wheels and tires fit that wheel well. I mean, they're like, that's important to get the right look of the car, is to get that stretched over the fender look. Like if they're almost rubbing, that's the way to go. And he's got wheelie bar mounts back there, but I don't have the wheelie bars to put on. I have to get those put on there still. So it's set up with a 4-link in the rear of my dad's own design. He actually used the top bar of the Art Morrison kit, ended up becoming the bottom bar. We painted the shocks with American flags, and so that 4-link is kind of his own doing, because they don't sell a kit, because the kicks up so soon in the back. You can see there's the wheel tub right there behind the seat. So the 4-links are usually longer, would end up intruding into the seat area. Now this panel here, a couple bolts that'll lift right out so you can access the 4-link from the top. And B&M shifter, he's got stock gauges.
Why'd you paint it Hugger orange?
When he got the car, it was red. It was like a candy apple red. He was actually thinking about going candy apple red again, and he was going through paint charts after paint charts, and then he decided, he said, you know what, I'm going to dry the tires off this thing. I want a paint that's going to be just straight and easy, non-metallic, easy to touch up. And Hugger orange was always my favorite color. I had a 70 Chevelle that I built in time to get my license. That was Hugger orange with white stripes. So he got thinking, he's like, you know what? He said, Hugger orange is a good competition color for a hot rod. He goes, I'm just going to go Hugger orange, because he said that was always your favorite color, so I know it'll look good on the car. So that's how it became Hugger orange. So this car is nice and bright.
That's cool. Is there anything on the car that you would change?
Anything I would change? I'm going to drop the carburetors down a couple inches just to increase visibility. And I don't like the shifter. I want to change that. It's B&M Street Bandit, and it doesn't have a lockout for going in. You can go right from driving to neutral, and I don't like that. Other than that, like, maybe better brakes. So it's got stock 65 up Corvette brakes in the front, and stock Ford 11-inch drums in the rear. And it stops all right, but this motor, when it starts surging, it likes to try to pull on the brakes pretty hard. So I'd maybe go to a wheel width setup or something, or bare brakes or something in the future.
Mm-hmm. Is there any favorite memories you have with the Vette?
Oh man, we drove this thing all over the place, and I remember getting caught in the rain with him coming back from Cleveland, Tennessee, and it was raining so hard we had no roof on it at the time, and it was before the blower motor, and it was pouring rain, and we're just driving, trying to get through the gorge, and it was raining so hard the wind was blowing the rain up around the inside of the windshield was getting wet. And we pulled into a gas station to get dry, and I pulled up to the pumps. I was driving, and I pulled up to the pumps, and there was a downspout, and I had a hole in it, and it was pissing out the downspout right into the door. So we had to pull over to a different spot to get away from that. And it was cool, late night cruising with my dad, and I'd have my car, he'd have this one, and we'd go out cruising. I remember one time I was leaving the Guptill's car show in upstate New York, and there was a Camaro in front of me, and he had chalk numbers on the window. He was, he obviously drag raced the car, and it was a car I used to see on the back roads, but I never saw it leave its driveway. So seeing it on the road was kind of like all cool, and I pulled up behind him. I was in my Chevelle wagon, and I goosed it to get the guy's attention, and that wagon would hop and pull the front wheels off the ground. So I hopped the car, and then I turned and looked, and there was a cop sitting next to me, and I was like, oh no. So I just waved to the cop, and he kind of just looked and looked away. I was thinking, like, telling the guy in front of me, don't get on it, don't get on it. This cop's sitting right there, he might not see the cop. The light turned green, and that Camaro just burned rubber and took off. And the cop pulled up and double tapped his brakes like he was gonna drop in. The guy decided to get on Route 7 anyway, so the cop, you can see him hesitate a second, and then he kind of just gave up and left and drove. So I got on the highway, and the guy in the Camaro like wanted to mess with my Chevelle a little bit. He's going, right now, and I was like, all right, and we both jumped on it, and I pulled him, and I backed out of it. He's like, let's go again, and I pulled him back out of it, and just as I backed out of it, all of a sudden here comes my dad. Wow! He goes flying around me and the Camaro, and then falls back in and just kept going, and the guy in the Camaro just kind of sunk in a seat and fell back. We had a lot of fun with it. Another time he called me, I was home, and he called up, he's like, holy shit. He says, I almost rolled the car in the driveway. I said, what do you mean? He goes, he said, I took the car out for a ride, it was running good. He goes, I pulled up the driveway, and we had a long driveway. So he stopped, and he power braked the car, and he lit the tires up pretty good, got them good and hot, and as he rolled it out, he started to gain traction, and he shifted in a second, kept his foot in, and the front end came off the ground. He didn't know it came off the ground, and it started to head towards the trees, so he let off the throttle and turned the wheel a little bit. Well, when the front end touched back down, a quick jerk to the left, and he turned it back to the right, and then started heading towards a rock, and then cranked it the other way, and the car skipped up on its side, and he had 31 18.5 Mickeys on it, and there was grass stuck between the tire and the rim. It went up that hard, and I was like, holy crap, Dad. I said, what were you thinking? He goes, honestly, how am I going to explain this to my insurance company? So it's like, you know, when you're in the middle of something, you don't know what you're thinking of, and then when that cut pops in, I just thought it was kind of funny. It wasn't like, oh God. It was, how am I going to explain this to my insurance company? Luckily, it didn't hurt anything. He didn't hit anything with it, and the car was perfectly fine. We just had to pull the grass out of the tire.
How was the Vette originally ordered? Like the color, engine, anything like that?
The car, this is a very late 64. It was actually built in July of 64. It was an A.O. Smith body. GM hired out 2 different companies to build the bodies in 64, and A.O. Smith built this one. I don't know what engine it was. I know it was a 4-speed car. I'm assuming it was probably a 250 or 300 horse 327. I know it was not a fuelie car. Car was originally red with a black interior. Like I said, when he got it, it was candy apple red. So as far as I know, this car was always red until my dad painted it orange. The guy he got it from had a custom built with the Mako nose, and it was hit. So they just broke the nose off and then grafted on the Mako shark nose. Then they added the wing and stuff like that. And it was kind of a banged up car that came out of New York City originally. It won the World of Wheels event that it was in. The guy had a picture of this big 6-foot tall trophy and he was standing there with lamb chops and bell bottoms. So it was an event winning car in its day.
How long was the build time?
It probably took a year or 2 to get it going in its pro street trim, and maybe 2 years. You know, he dove into it pretty quick. He was retired, so he had a lot of time, and I'd help him when I could. And yanked the body off, stripped it right down to nothing. He borrowed a frame table from my friend Billy Yetto, and welded it all to the table to make sure it was square. Cut it all out, made his own frame rails in the back. The car actually was, what I always thought was kind of cool is it's not a back half kit. He made his own frame rails, and he jigged everything up and cut that rear suspension out, and the frame didn't move. You know, he just lifted the suspension out and set it aside, and then built his own cross members in there. So the car actually doesn't know it's tubbed. You know, it's all the stock body mounts are still there, so it'll bolts right down to a stock body mounts on the chassis. Stock gas tank location, stock gas tank mount. It was actually a stock gas tank until I put this new tank in.
What are the biggest changes made to the car from stock? Not obviously the blower engine that you can obviously see.
Like the hidden detail stuff?
Yes.
There's a lot. Every cross member of this car has been modified. So in 64, they didn't have the big block Chevy yet. They had a clearance to frame rails on the frame cross member for the 65 and up Corvettes to clear the big block Chevy. So my dad actually, I don't know, we'll see if we can dive in and see it. Underneath that blower snout is a recess in the frame that dishes in, so it'll clear the balancer and pulleys and stuff. So he modified that cross member for that. The original cross member for the transmission is not removable, so he had to modify that cross member so he could drop it out and actually put the mount in for the Turbo 400, because the Turbo 400 is a lot longer than the Power Glide or the 4-speed that would have been available in these cars. He had to stretch the tunnel, widen it, and raise it, because being an independent suspension car, it doesn't need a lot of travel. There is no travel, the drive shaft. So he had to clearance that to fit a 3.5 inch drive shaft. Of course, the rear section is all tub now, so that's all new cross members and stuff. So, and I think he actually, maybe this back little panel at the back frame rail connector isn't that modified, but everything else is. Another thing that a lot of people miss on this car is the mid-year Corvettes have a piece that comes down here because the bumper comes around and drops down. He shaved that and actually arched this back panel. It really clearances a lot more for the wheelie bars. You can see the wheelie bar mounts under there. Right there's one and there's the other. So that panel's been modified. Every body panel on this car has been modified in some way, shape, or form. You know, holes filled, things shaved. One of the details that I like on this car is how he opened up the gills. And when he first did the car, he didn't have that mesh in there. And we were at Lebanon Valley Dragway in upstate New York. We were at the swap meet there. They had Nostalgia Drags, still one of my favorite swap meets. And he's walking around, he saw this mesh grills. They're like a stainless steel. And he said, what are those things off? The guy had a pair of them. And he says, believe it or not, he says, you never guess. He said, they came off of a Turbo LeBaron. He goes, where they fit, I don't know. He said, my car got hit and they paid for those and the body shop couldn't figure out where they went either. So he had them sitting on the table for sale. My dad said, I think they'll work. And they were exactly the right size. They like any smaller, they wouldn't have fit that opening. So it was really, he got really lucky with it. Made a couple tabs on the back, glassed them in. So I think that gives a nice little chrome reveal on there. The hood, of course, is cut real big for the blower. And fits in the blower pretty well. The old scoop that just barely stuck out, he followed that with actually this edge here, he did with a rope. He soaked it in fiberglass resin, he just lined it up there and then sanded up to it and filled up to it the way he wanted it. No door handle on this side, because that's a 65 door and he didn't want to order two different door handle kits. So he's like, you know what, I'm gonna shave the door handle. He was thinking about shaving them both. That's something I might change. I might put a door handle back on this side. So yeah, everything, and you know, stretched 2.5-inch wheel well on the back to fit the bigger tires. That's a 65 to 67 small block hood. The 64 hoods had a recess that sat down in. Just about everything has been modified in one way, shape, or form. The stock dash, face, and glove box door is always black on the mid-years. And this car, again, was all black interior originally. So he wanted to kind of pull in some of his 57 Corvette, which was the Shoreline Beige Cove. So you use Shoreline Beige on the dash and glove box and on the door panels and stuff.
So now that it's your car, what are your plans to do with it in the future?
There's a few things. Maybe, like I said earlier, maybe a brake upgrade so it can stop a little better. Stop's fine, but this motor, the motor will push the brakes pretty good at traffic light. You got to stand on it pretty good. Manual disc brakes in the front. I got a spacer coming to drop the carburetors. My dad wanted it so the blower was over the roof. I like it having a little bit of visibility, so I'm going to drop the carburetors a couple inches. This Petronic seems to be working great in it, but I might step up to an MSD setup with a spark box that I can do a boost retard in there, so I can have run a little bit more advanced when I'm cruising down the street to help the motor run a little bit cooler. That's kind of it. Sometimes I think about making a pro street again. I'm a gasser guy through and through, and I love gassers. So if I keep it a gasser, I might letter it up. Maybe put Eastern Hot Rod on the fender or name on the door. Maybe AA gas on the sail panel or double B gas. I got to weigh the car, find out how much it weighs. Just little stuff like that, I guess. But for the most part, I like the car just the way it is, and it feels really good to have it running again. It means a lot. It means a real lot. I know my dad would be happy to see it running again. I feel like this car. This car was starting to give him a little bit of trouble, and then he got sick with cancer and just didn't have the energy to go work on it. So there's a lot of times this car just sat because he wasn't feeling well. So it seemed like this car beat him, and not being able to straighten it out. And I told him, I said, Dad, we just haven't had a lot of time to work on it because you being sick. So we got it back going again, and it only made it to the gas station and barely home. And after that, his health took a big turn, and it was, the car never drove with him behind the wheel again. So it sat, for about another year and a half before I actually got a chance to get back on it. So sorting out the fuel system, and then having the ignition quit on me, and then fixing that, and now I can reach in and hit that key and have it fire up like a wooden car should. just having that is pretty darn cool. But you know, there might be some changes I might do. He's got a stock style seat in there. I might go back to the later Corvette seats that he had in it because they sat a little bit lower. I had a little bit more headroom. It gets kind of tight. My hair tickles the headliner. If I drop the seats down, maybe there'll be enough room for me to put a roll cage in to get it NHRA legal, so I can bring it to the track. But other than that, it's really just kind of run it the way it is for now, I guess. But leave your comments in the section in the bottom, and let me know if you think I should leave it as a gasser or turn it back into a Pro Street. I know turning a Pro Street is going to cost a fortune in wheels and tires, but and I'd have to rerun my exhaust a little different. Other than that, it would be a pretty easy, almost a weekend thing to do. So I don't know. We'll see what the future holds, but I know I'm not going to let this one go. You know, it was neat when my dad built it, and I was there. I was glad I was there along the way to help him out with stuff. I remember coming home one time from work, and he was working on laying out the rear wheel tubs and flaring the fenders. And he was wearing a mask to protect himself, but it was just a crappy painter's mask. And I remember he had like a witch's nose of dried fiberglass hanging off his nose like an icicle from where he kept pushing the mask back up over his face. And I'm like, that cannot be filtering out what it needs to filter out. And he was itchy because he was allergic to fiberglass. He was itchy as could be for days after that. So that's just cool, you know, neat memories like that. Like when he put the stock nose on, where we cut it to fit the stock nose. We did all the roughing stuff before we brought it over to Martin to have him paint it. So it was, you know, the car has been completely repainted. Once the stock nose went on, it had to be blended into the door anyway, and there was a few things that were starting to show from its age. So he just had Mr. Martin redo the whole paint job on it and paint the roof, body color, and everything. And I really like the way it's looking now, and the paint's beautiful on it. This car has been through everything. You know, it has been crashed multiple times before he got it. It's been customized. It went through the ringer. If a Corvette guy saw this car when he started, they would have laughed at it and walked away. You know, it was a parts car at that point. The next evolutionary step in this car's life was not a stock restoration. It was to take it to the next level of hot rod, because it was a 60s hot rod, it was a 70s hot rod, and it just languished from the 70s. It hasn't changed much at all. When it just got worn out, he put it away. My dad came along and rescued it. So this car will never be stock again. It's got way too many modifications. As a matter of fact, I had an insurance company said they won't insure it because of excessive modifications, which I guess that's pretty cool.
We talk about how, like, your favorite things and like the things you change.
Yeah.
But what is your least favorite thing? Like, we already know you're gonna lower the.
Oh, my least favorite thing?
Yeah, your least favorite thing.
On the car,
the way that it is now.
My least favorite thing is that my dad's not here to be driving it anymore. But taking that out of the equation, my least favorite thing about the car is the shifter. I don't like the way the shifter works.
Okay.
Let's see if we'll start without me even getting inside it to show you how much better this thing starts. Get some fuel pressure to it. Not too bad for being stone cold and being a big blower motor and dual quads. People keep telling me you can't run dual quads on the street.